All right, you guys can go ahead now.
Thanks so much, Emily. Thank you everyone for attending today. I know it's been a snowy day, like I know at least for Ontario, but not sure of other provinces because I know you guys are all over Canada. Just want to thank you for attending today. Today discussion will be finding real value today in the metaverse. So today, just to let you know, my name is Ricky Fraser. I'm actually the solution specialist of Microsoft here at CDW Canada. Also, I have here today in the segment Sean Graglia. He's our mixed reality lead at Microsoft Canada, right? So we're going to go today into a segment of what is the metaverse, right? These are the questions. A lot of people, they heard a lot of things online about and actually engaged in interfaces like Decentraland and like all these different types of web applications that are kind of like metaverse experiences. But we're going to go into a little more discussion on a professional standpoint and how this technology, as well as devices, can be used for your mixed reality experience. We have a question and answer segment, so feel free to post any questions you have in that box. We'll be able to answer throughout the slides. As well, at the end of the presentation, we will have open discussion. So at that point, you could even turn your mics on if you have any further questions to add. Okay, so just want to start off, Sean. What is like the metaverse, like in definition, and how does Microsoft fit into that role, and what's their perspective on it?
Thanks, Ricky. It's funny because I'm smiling because I think every time, and I suspect everyone on the call is similar, every time we look in the news, there's been a new definition of the metaverse. Whether you're Wired, Bloomberg, Harvard Business Review, everyone's got a separate definition. And if you remember, this started a year ago that it really started to blossom, even though the metaverse term comes from many, many years ago. Here's how Microsoft has taken a stab at it, and kind of what we've listened to cue in. And so when we look at our research that we've actually got there, the signals that we've got in our work trend index, it points out a couple of key things about what people are thinking about in the metaverse. So yeah, 52% of employees are actually open to using immersive spaces in the metaverse for meetings and team activities and things like that. So there's excitement along with the definition. There's 47% of employees are open to representing themselves as avatars, which if there's time left at the end, I'll turn on mine. But it's a different way of engaging. And we see Gen Z and millennials actually leading the charge of expecting to do some of their work in the metaverse. And so there's this building momentum of wanting and desiring to do something in the metaverse, but there's still that definition of what exactly are we talking about. So let me zero in on that. And this all builds up to why Microsoft has, for many years, been thinking of the metaverse as something really big. And so when a lot of us were around when personal computing came out, and then the web blossomed, and that changed the way we did things, and then that expanded into mobile and cloud. We see Microsoft sees metaverse at the same sort of realm, and I think that's why you've seen the excitement and the rush to kind of define what's been going on. So to a definition, this is the Microsoft view, and each one of these words is chosen carefully about how we think about the technology stack that's going to allow for persistence, which actually ends up being part of the really complicated piece that we want to simplify for people. No matter where you are, being persistent in that new world and the representations that go with it. So that's how Microsoft takes a look at it. But what I like, what we've tried to break it down is still there's this nebulous solution of what is metaverse, and I like to give it three different things. We call them realms. And so the first one, consumer, well, that's been around, and anyone who wants to raise their hand, you can react in Teams and let me know if you've already been in the metaverse and consumer and playing Second Life, or all the way back in the 70s and 80s when it was text-based. But those kind of things already existed, so we have those. And then there's the commercial side, where the enterprise plays, and being able to take your work and actually work and collaborate in a metaverse world. And then the third realm is the industrial realm, and that's actually the one I focus on the most in my role, is enabling industrial specific things that we'll talk about a little bit later, solutions and technology that allow you to really just execute, and all the way up to simulating and training. So those are the three realms that I like to break down the metaverse into something a little bit more simpler.
Great. Those are really interesting perspectives. Just want to know, like on a technology standpoint, we have like VR, we have AR, we have MR, we have XR, right? How does the technology make the metaverse real?
Another good example to bring forward to say, hey, let's simplify this. Here's been my take on it, and you'll notice I like to talk a little bit in threes. We've got VR, AR, and MR, and sometimes they're used interchangeably, which confuses even more. When I think about virtual reality, I'm thinking about completely closed off in your own little world, and it doesn't necessarily mix what's going on in the real world. And so examples of that are the games that we sometimes playing. I'm sure there's a few first-person shooter gamers in the audience today that they're well versed in the virtual reality side. And then when we think about augmented reality, I was just driving my dad's car the other day and it had a heads-up display. Data being augmented, real-time data, almost IoT type device, that renders what's going on and adds to the environment, but you're not really interacting with it. And so that's the way I like to think of AR. You're not necessarily manipulating what you're viewing. Mixed reality, which isn't a term Microsoft came up with, it's from researchers many years ago. That's where you're mixing the best of both worlds, I like to call it, the virtual world as well as the real world. And what I like about it is in my office here, I can put on my device, my HoloLens device, and I don't need to worry about bumping into things, but I can still manipulate holograms in that world. So that's the way I like to kind of break that down. And then just really simply, what is the technology involved? We won't spend too much technology. Again, three things: the devices, the one I was just wearing as an example, the apps. The devices don't do much without the right apps that go with it. And then services is something Microsoft and Azure is coming out with to enable these types of apps. But that's how I like to think about the technical side of all these different things that are making up the metaverse.
Yeah, that's great at a high level. How is the technology being used today, though? That's what I want to know.
It's a good question, especially when we think about all of the craziness that's been out there. Is this really being used? And the answer is a resounding yes. And so I'd love to share a couple of stories and really start with, well, what are the common use cases we've got? I'll even step back. When Microsoft, being an engineering company, came out with this amazing device, the HoloLens 1. And we weren't sure how to use it. We knew it would have value, but is it a consumer device? Is it a commercial device? And resounding through customers and partners over the first few years was, this is a commercial device. This solves real commercial challenges. And that's why part of what was built into the HoloLens 2 that we have today. And these use cases are what customers and partners were telling us. And so it's almost ordered from the simplest and most, if you wanted to do more with less today, you could do the first couple that I've got on there, all the way out to digital twins. And just to explain these a little bit, and then we'll go through some examples. Remote support and inspection. So we've seen over the pandemic, you can't fly someone out. It costs too much money. It's burning sustainability. It's taking people away from their family and COVID complications. So now we're able to provide that into the field and empower that field worker by having the remote expert or inspection crew on a Teams call, for example, while the person in the field is actually wearing a device. And then guided training and task management seems to be the other side of it. It's my sense, especially as I talk to educators, and the next one's training and simulation, the way we train people is fundamentally going to change with this technology, and it already is. And there's a few examples that we'll give of that. But guided training, step-by-step training is kind of the next one. And training and simulation, taking it one step further, where you've got a visualization of how you're being trained. Immersive sales, we're seeing a few examples of that, where we're able to see what you're buying before you buy it and save yourself some decision time and costly mistakes. Designing and prototyping, getting a little bit more sophisticated, being able to change the way we design before we actually go and construct. And of course, digital twins, bringing in IoT data and bringing in different real world data. These are the kind of use cases that we're seeing. And then you're asking about, well, just to expand a little bit on the digital twin side, It's really about like the four things there. We connecting people with the data that they want to visualize, and a lot of times when people visualize, they can make different decisions. Being able to monitor and manage that data, and visualize and analyze and predict, and being able to do that in different ways that's very immersive. And of course, simulating and automating and doing this all in a virtual world, or in a mixed reality. And so you were those are the use cases that at least kind of give you the theoretical point, and hopefully that explains a little bit more about how it's being used.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great breakdown of everything. I truly appreciate that. But like as of today, like what organizations are using this technology today? And what are the use cases?
Good point. So, Sean, thanks for the use cases. Is this real? And yes, the
Exactly.
answer is yes. And we've got a couple of examples out there, and I'm going to dig into a few, especially some Canadian ones as we go on. But when you look at manufacturing, is where it's resonated quite a bit. Automotive, healthcare providers are using it, construction, higher education, and of course the retailers I was just talking about. But being able to manufacture in a way that prevents errors, and we've seen that at Lockheed Martin with their solution. By raise of virtual hands, are there any whiskey drinkers with us today? We've got a few people.
Say
uh,
myself.
Great whiskey. Thanks. Good stuff. Uh, Suntory is able to use their mixed reality solution to actually reduce their training time. So one of those use cases I mentioned earlier, in being able to provide real world value to their solution. And then even in the automotive side of the game, being able to get some stuff I'll show you a little bit later, being able to reduce inspection time. So these are real savings that the customers are telling us and their partners what they're getting. Even in healthcare, decreasing the ward time that they're able to put out there. In construction, reducing safety incidents. So safety comes up quite a bit, being able to make sure that we're safe in the environment and we know what's going on. And Case Western done some great, amazing work on their ability to impact learning, to actually see what they're learning in their holoanatomy, in addition to actually working with cadavers. And of course, the kitchen kettle there is actually a retail one where the purchaser is actually to see, well, what does the kitchen look like and what decisions do I need to make? And that's increase their conversion rates. So there's just a few examples. And I just want to go into a few, dig into a few of them before we move on to other ones. And this one near and dear to my heart, because this is Joey. He's in Brampton, and this is a video of him at his location, and his technicians, he's the lead technician, are using HoloLens today in their base. So if you have a Mercedes and you take it in for repairs and it needs some extra help, they don't need to fly in someone from Vancouver to Toronto or someone from Montreal over, or even someone from Germany. They're actually able to reduce their travel and of course the carbon footprint that goes with that, by using this solution. And you can see Joey there where he's got someone remote that's able to guide him. When we did the launch of this with the Mercedes-Benz, we were actually having the analysts participate in a wiring diagram update that was needed to happen to solve a problem. So a real world happening it's happening today in Microsoft, and with Mercedes-Benz. And then this another one dear to my heart. This was earlier in the pandemic when. And the other thing I'll suggest is even if your organization is a different industry, maybe you're in public sector, maybe you're in an industry that wasn't covered earlier. There's the use cases are still applicable. And so this one example is an example where we want to reduce the number of people that are going into a risky area. And then on top of that, they wanted to reduce their PPE, and of course, conserving costs and the environment along with that. And it turns out that the device there being pictured, the ventilators were actually fairly complex, and they didn't have everyone trained at the time. So it's a great way that the Jewish General Hospital, working with a partner out of Quebec that was more versed in the industrial phase, but they had a conversation about, hey, could this help? And it turns out, yes, it actually absolutely helped them.
Great.
I'm just going to play you a quick video that really takes us to the next level of surgical planning, something out of the US. I'll let that play. I should have warned you. It might have been a tearjerker as you watched
Yeah.
it. It certainly was for me the first time I saw it. But
Yeah.
it's a great example of how it's actually real today and changing lives. I hope everyone liked that. I hope you like that, Ricky.
Yeah, no, it actually hit a soft spot in me because I've lost a few relatives to cancer in
Mm.
recently, and you know, it really hurt. And you know, I feel that medicine has advanced a lot, and we're headed in the right direction. But technologies like this, I think, is key to the enhancement of learning and progression. Right? I think this is essential. This is great. Yeah, but thanks for sharing that. But also, just want to know, you mentioned training and learning,
Mm.
right? Could you give some examples of how training and learning is implemented with this, as far as embedding with new people using this technology to enhance their learning experience?
Yeah, another good use case example, and almost we've just went from the most common to one of the more complex. Let's ground ourselves again on some of the more common use cases, and so let's take a look at another Canadian institution. And what I like about this is this is 100-year-old plus manufacturing company out of Quebec, and one of the reasons why I like it is in order to keep growing, in order to get to those next 100 years, they're open to technology in order to help them with the changing workforce. And we talk a lot about it. And I mentioned the work insights at the beginning of our conversation, and how we're looking at the workforce and the multi-generational, and we've got the retired workforce coming out, we've got new coming in, and really the ability to train. The trainers are limited. How do you duplicate a trainer? How do you train people up faster? And so this was what Kruger faced, and their solution was to actually capture some of that intelligence with HoloLens 2 and Dynamics 365 guides. And you kind of see in the rotating video the multi-step guides and the ability to completely hands-free, which is another key factor as I've talked to customers looking for this. How can I just work with my hands? And he's actually controlling it with his eyes or his voice. And so that's one example and step-by-step training that's actually happened out there. But there's another example that I wanted to share in video again, where it was a recent, earlier you heard me talk about how this is working with remote support at an automotive dealership. Well, Toyota is actually also very advanced in the guided training, and it was a feature on CNN recently. So let me just play that a little bit, and we'll take a look.
Okay.
So I cut that short just
Oh,
to keep us moving, but it gives you an idea of how it's being used in the workplace today. So that was a
yeah,
nice
that's
feature that we
awesome.
had recently. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty awesome. Yeah.
There's one more Canadian example that I wanted to share as well. And anyone who's looked at the back of a $5 bill will know what I'm talking about. The one with the spaceman and
Yeah.
at the end of the
Yeah.
space arm. Remember that one?
Yeah. Yeah.
And these folks, it was fun learning what they were doing. But the challenges they were facing was, we talked about this in the use cases. When you've got petabytes of data, How do you turn that into something that you can actually interpret and action and learn from? And so that was part of the use case that was driving this, is all this data in the space, in outer space, and they can't visualize it in outer space. There's not enough cameras. So they actually took that data and made an app that will actually visualize, and you can see it in some of the examples rolling past, of how that looks on the International Space Station, and then learn from it, and then make adjustments, and that you can see right there. They also built a multi-collaboration environment so that they could actually train astronauts and ground crew from around the world, as opposed to always being physically located. And the other use case they had was, and again on the training, and what they found is, and you can see this also in some of the other examples that I was giving on training, to be able to see the inside of the mechanism and understand how it's used really helps with the retention and understanding of when you change something in the manipulator that you're using, how that impacts the device. And so it's just another example of how training can be used. And again, I'd emphasize, if you're in an industry that, okay, I don't think there's too many people on the call building spaceships, but the use case can still be applicable. The step-by-step training, the remote support that we've kind of seen there before, and so those are good examples of how we're finding. And then I talked a bit about this earlier. One of the other examples, Case Western, I actually have them on a Microsoft webcast coming up on the November 29th, and they're sharing with how it's changed the way they deliver anatomy. And it was really wild. In this office, when I first started with the business, I had a skeleton here, and I had the professor and instructor a country away actually guiding me on Microsoft Teams as I was able to look through the skeleton. So, and you can see there, it actually is impacting higher retention rates. So if you're working in an institution and you're attending the call, or you're thinking, then there's different solutions out there that can actually help you with that as well. And one of the other favorite ones I have that I wanted to share was, again, in this office at my couch behind me, I had a gentleman that looked like this, a COVID patient sitting.
I saw that.
Wasn't that crazy?
Yeah, it was crazy.
And this came up when I was talking to the folks at MDA. There's a certain amount of shock and awe that you want to experience in a semi-real world as opposed to the real world. And I'll tell you, when it is, and you probably saw this too, Ricky, it's kind of freaky when you can hear in stereo the coughing. You can see the vital signs. You can see what's happening and impacting on the things that you're doing. It's a much superior way of learning than learning from a textbook. And so this is where we're seeing quite popular and driving significant impact. That's where we're seeing kind of the training come along, Ricky.
So yeah, so today in the metaverse, like I took some notes here, so people could learn, right?
Yeah.
They can, if they need help, they can get remote assist wherever they are, right? You can have one person managing one device and have like 200-300 people all over the world experiencing that support. Digital twins was mentioned earlier in the slides. Can you go a little bit more deep dive into that and how it's being realized today in our industries?
Thanks, Ricky. Good catch. Yeah, the digital twins I'm having more and more conversations as the years goes on in the side of the business. And there's a piece of it that's actually mature that I'll talk a little bit about, and there's a piece that's actually quickly evolving. For the most part in digital twins, you're seeing things like we're seeing from Bowen Engineering, where they're actually able to see things that they can't normally see because it hasn't been built yet, or it's behind walls. So at one time we coined this as like an X-ray vision that you can actually see as you're looking at the device.
Yeah.
So here we could reducing rework, which translates to reduced cost, higher profit margin, safety, and sustainability. And so this is one way of translating they call them BIM models, and GIS models of how we can actually visualize that without actually having to be immersed. That's one example, and that's from Boeing Engineering and a company called Trimble with their product called Trimble Connect. The other thing that Trimble sells is actually HoloLens in a hard hat. So they have officially licensed and been safety checked to actually have the hard hat and HoloLens together. So you're able to go on site in a safe environment. And then the other example, and again, this is similar in the digital twin, kind of be able to visualize what's going on. Knox Innovation, you can see there, they decreased their construction costs by 14% by being able to see it with actually a company called Visual Live, very appropriate. They're now owned by Unity, but you can kind of get in a visual here. I'm able to see the line. I'm able to see how this process goes into this next process and see whether that's appropriate or not. And then further down the line, we've got we'll have and I've got one thing. If we have time, I'll show you an example of how you can actually pull in other data, service data of a manufacturing line that you're looking at, or you could be pulling in IoT data and being able to visualize and very quickly zero in on different things. So those are a couple examples that we have on the digital twin side.
Great, thank you. Yeah, those are like great examples. I think there's definitely great use cases for today using the metaverse. But like as far as the future, what does the future hold for the metaverse and these technologies that support that? What is your opinion on that?
I have that question so often, Ricky, and I think every time we meet, we talk about what the future could be, don't we?
Oh yeah.
It's just such an exciting area of technology and the problems that it can solve, the opportunities that it builds. But let's talk a little bit about that. One thing you've heard about Microsoft is working on Mesh, which is more of the back-end platform that'll enable some of the things we've talked about. It turns out that these things that it's trying to achieve, being able to feel presence, being able to experience together in remote locations, connect with, and they're technically very difficult. And it's interesting. And earlier I was talking about MDA, the folks that make the space farm. They're a group of engineers. They solved a lot of this on their own, but it took a lot of horsepower, and it takes that kind of organization. So what Microsoft is pursuing is being able to democratize this and make this available for other app developers, or just make it so easy that with the apps that folks like yourselves on the line will be able to use. So that's the back end of it. And then, so what kind of use cases is Microsoft thinking about? And many of those are actually available today. It's just not in the way that would be optimized for some of the experience we've got. And so when you look, immersive meetings, that's where there's a lot of excitement about. Going down that line is where Mesh for Teams, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But being able to collaborate so that it's as if you're there. And I've been in a few meetings because there are some apps that are like that. And Ricky, what's fun is you and I are talking, and I'm talking into a webcam, and I feel I'm talking to you. But in an immersive meeting, you could be right here, and then we would find out how short I am, and I would actually be talking to you up here. So it's a much more immersive way to collaborate, and you're engaged as opposed to being maybe slightly disconnected. And so there's that side of the game. There's the product and design showcase. We talked a little bit about that, but being able to review that digital twin in a collaborative environment, and even virtual store. There are some still examples that I didn't get into of, I'll say it wrong, Fragmo. Oh, an Italian high-end clothing manufacturer has an example where they're able to visualize the shoes, for example, so that they can pull out the right ones that are meaningful to you.
Awesome.
And of course, conferences, and even conferences. I mean, they're for customers, for consumer. You can do this today, and even in the live concerts, you can do this. There's a tool from Microsoft called Altspace VR, which is a consumer-focused environment, and they actually do live concerts and have virtual conference in there. Where the sense is, and where Microsoft wants to go, and where customers are demanding, is make that enterprise commercial available, which is where we'll head out. And then, of course, social hubs, whether it be with employees or fan club or whatnot. So these are the use cases that we're hearing are resonating, that is driving us in the direction. And so where are we going? Where's Microsoft going first? First is with the expressive avatars. And I pause there to think, can I turn my avatar on really quickly? And maybe I'll do that if we've got time for Q&A.
Or do it in Q&A.
I'll do it in Q&A so you can see, and you can decide whether the avatar actually looks like me. I should have wore the same outfit. And it's interesting. What we're finding is we've got message back from people, like a little bit of fatigue on the video, but wanting to be more engaged and expressive without having the need to be on video. And so that's what we can actually do on avatars today. It's just rolling out in preview right now. It is a different way of engaging. It's funny, I was using it on a meeting last night, and it sparks conversation that then leads into deeper conversations within the meeting. And then immersive teams is where Microsoft will head. We don't have an ETA necessarily on when that's happening, but it's a next logical continuance as to where we would want to go. And just a little deeper of an example of what you see in my scene from Microsoft is being able to walk up on that board with someone beside you, and they're at the same height or taller, depending on how you are, and being able to go up on that whiteboard and use the Post-it notes or capture your notes on a whiteboard, and then have that saved and be part of the collaboration environment, say Microsoft 365, and be able to continue doing that. So just another immersive way of getting people together. And so and this is typically more often than not, I'm on a meeting like this. And if you haven't had a chance to look on preview, you will be able to soon create your own avatar and be able to be part of the meeting and express yourself in a different way. And I noticed I'll just address the question right away, how immersive spaces is different from Horizon Workrooms. It's two different ways of approaching the problem of how doing the immersion of meetings. So Meta is developing their solution, and that's great. Microsoft will develop their solution that'll work with Teams, where we have a few hundred million, I think the last count was 290 million active users of Microsoft Teams, just being able to use it in a different environment. But the other thing you would have heard from Meta, if you looked at Meta Comment, was the ability to actually share your avatar between. So whether you're on one platform or another. And this is the kind of open strategy and approach that Microsoft wants to see in building out the metaverse. The plumbing Microsoft will focus on, and we want that make the solutions available to everyone. So your avatar should be able to move between the different two. And so we'll see that. And I think we do have a couple of minutes where I can show you kind of what an example might look like if we've got all of this pulled together. So let me just see if I can roll that video.
Sure, thanks.
So there we go. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to share that. And yes, I have turned on my avatar, and you can actually see that my avatar's mouth is moving as I talk. It's a good example of where Microsoft is headed with the technology and pulling everything from the devices to the cloud to the apps together to make it real for folks. So this is more of a proof of concept of where we could go. But one of the things I talk about, Ricky, with a lot of our customers is if you don't need to wait until what I just showed you is off the shelf. Today, you can actually go out and start the journey. And almost if you don't start now, it's going to be so late behind the eight ball. You're going to find there's going to be a lot of catch-up room. So it's almost take a look at which use cases that are applicable to you and your organization today and get started with the help of a partner like CDW. So hopefully that gives the folks online a good idea of what's real today and where we're headed.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That gives a great overview of how organizations are using Metaverse like today. But also, where is Microsoft is going in the process as well, and how they're aligning to these customers in that journey, right? What is your perspective, or what's your opinion on how customers can get started with this?
It's good, and I'll do one more. I like your question, so I'm gonna give you a like. And I've enjoyed this, so I'll give you a heart, and then I'm going to tune on my regular camera. There's a whole bunch of
That's
things
so
we
cool.
could spend the rest of the day going through these different ways of expecting, but I'll turn it back on my camera. One of the things we found is any new technology, it can get tricky. Even though Microsoft's approach, for example, on the HoloLens was let's treat this as a Windows device and let that be managed, even autopilot, for those technical, and from a security standpoint. Uh, it's still helpful to have a partner with expertise that can guide them. And so that's why I tend to steer a lot of the conversations with partners that that will help the organization first figure out what's the right use case, and is this going to benefit me in my organization, and what does that look like? What are the apps that I should be using? What sort of devices? And of course, for me, for HoloLens, helping with that decision, and then helping steer towards whatever service is needed to actually help the customer configure, do a successful pilot, ideally, as opposed to trying to do it on their own, and then do the rollout and management and whatnot. So I think partners, and this is where CDW can shine, is helping the customer be successful down that line. If a business goes out on their own and tries this, and they're missing the IT component, that can hurt the pilot, the proof of concept, but it can also hurt the rollout. Much more success that we've seen with partnerships, Ricky.
That's great. Oh, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, like to be honest, like that, it's great to know that. Just from my own experience, working with customers internally at CDW Canada for HoloLens 2, we had many opportunities in like many different sectors, even surprising sectors that you wouldn't even think of when it comes to using remote assist and training for even industries like the bakery industry. There's oil and gas. We have banking, some really good projects that are developing with the banking industry, among other retailers as well, which is good. Just creating that interface or that engagement with users in a better experience, right? Not only on that perspective, but then also on the training aspect too. So, great points. Yeah, if you want to just go to the next slide, I just wanted to show how you can engage with myself. So myself, I'm Ricky. There's my email address, but you can always reach out to your CDW account representative to engage in a meeting with us, right? We can go over, just your vision and be with you on that journey, on that roadmap to success. We're using HoloLens 2 as well as the metaverse, right? Chris Height. He's also the solution architect for HoloLens 2. He's my counterpart, and we work together. So we would engage with you on calls to kind of go through that whole process on a technical standpoint. We do have partners that are aligned with us that provide professional services and can even alleviate some of that DevOps devs support as far as developing whatever applications you need, objects. providing even training guides, assisting with the whole process. So however way we can be involved, not just on the device side, but also on the software and licensing perspective and support, we can be there as well. Okay, so and we've proven it already. So reach out to us as well. We will actually share this video afterwards. So you can overview that as well as sharing that with your colleagues. Anyone who weren't able to attend will be able to share that as well to them, and then they can reach out to us if they have further questions. But I do see questions in the Q&A right now, so we will kind of direct into that right now. Sorry, Emily, if you wanted to read off some of those questions, I think there's a few already.
Yes. Give me
If you
one
guys
second.
want, after we go through the questions on the Q&A, you can take your mics off as well and ask any questions that you wish. Thank you.
So in the chat, I think there's just one question. I don't see anything in the Q&A portion,
Okay.
but the question is from Bernie. He says, how is immersive spaces different than Horizon workrooms?
And I tried to touch on that a bit on the fly, but I'll just make sure I address your question. Typically in any use case, there'll be multiple manufacturers or developers that will provide solutions. And so you've seen Meta announce where they're going in their direction, and they'll almost have a net new app that they'll roll out at some point in the future to their users. And so Microsoft is also solving the challenge of immersive environment. At the same time, we're building the plumbing to allow for multiple apps to be able to do that. One of the key differences is the sheer level of adoption of Microsoft Teams. It's a very strategic decision Microsoft has taken to say, we're going to evolve Teams to become immersive, and that's why we're seeing one of the first things from Mesh for Teams. And thank you for your comment on my avatar. I spent way too long on it, but one day I am going to attend a meeting with the exact same outfit because I do have that. And so just two different manufacturers solving a similar challenge. I think where it also get interesting for me, and of course I'm biased, but Microsoft has the portfolio of Microsoft 365 from Windows to all the different Office apps, and that's all going to be accessible and integrated. And so you'll find yourself, if you've got a team set up and you've got files that you've got there, or you're sharing and you want to bring those up in the environment, it's all going to be accessible. And in a similar fashion, when I talked about remote assist, which is already available today. And so if you've got the HoloLens on, I've called her remotely into a call. I've got 5 people on Teams. They can actually pull a file from OneDrive, for example, and give it to me in the chat. It could be a PDF of a wiring diagram. So that kind of integration is, I think, a unique way of solving it that you'll see from Microsoft. Hopefully that answers your question. Thanks. How far away are we from Microsoft Mesh? I wish I had a roadmap to share with you. I will say, Microsoft doesn't generally share roadmaps, and so you won't see that. And the other takeaway that I've had is it's such a complex, from a software engineering perspective, it's very difficult to say this is when will be available. So you saw that Mesh for Teams, the avatars are currently in public preview, and really the best way to get at that is if your IT organization has you on the way Microsoft 365 releases. Is in different different groups of releases, and so this would be the preview release, and so they might have a small group of people that would have access to that, and of course I'm on that, and that's why I had the avatar. Lots of questions from Benny. 5 years since, about 3 years since HoloLens 2, multiple versions of the other headsets. Yeah. With more facial tracking, external cameras, yeah, all kinds of. Here's what I'll say. You heard me here. Microsoft doesn't release roadmaps. What I will say is Microsoft is looking for, when they look at where we need to take the technology, what's the package of technology that will really drive a step forward significantly. And what we found with HoloLens 2 is it was such a step forward, even today, and you can compare it to some of the latest folks that are out. When you add everything up, it's very difficult to compete with the HoloLens 2. Some folks will do a little better in certain areas, but holistically, it's still there. So I found that it's run. It's not your traditional life cycle where in 3 or 4 years you see the new one. So Microsoft feels that we have a lot of life left on it. It's still pivotal in terms of our strategy for building out the metaverse. So you'll have to just watch that space. You'll probably know at the same time as I do because Microsoft keeps that pretty tight. But I'm excited about where we're going. Thanks for the question, though.
Sean, I actually had a question myself.
Sure.
So I had a question about like how does a customer analyze the cost of like their whole, like let's say they have engineers that are traveling, to and fro
Yeah.
across the world to train. Is there some sort of like calculator or assessment that they can do to see how much money they would save utilizing HoloLens 2 versus their current situation?
There is, and let's see if I can pop the in the chat. We commissioned Forrester to actually come up with a little mixed reality calculator that you can actually put some of those fundamentals in. Oh, forgot about my phone. And so what we found is when you add things like the average time that it takes and your loaded labor rate, for example, that you're spending on there, the T&E costs that would typically go with it, and you factor all these different things in. So I'll see if I can come up with that link and drop it in the chat. But
Okay.
we're finding that's been a common way of for remote assist. When it comes to training, that's where it gets a little bit more difficult. And you saw some of the stats that when you look at an organization like Case Western University with the holoanatomy, they've taken the time to actually assess that. It's very difficult in a training environment to assess it. But it would be good to go in with that assertion of how much hours we may save, or I've heard, I can't quote it because it wasn't confirmed, but saving hundreds of hours of instructor time, for example, so that the instructor doesn't actually need to deliver it personally. Maybe they deliver a fraction of it, and the rest of
Yeah.
it's delivered through virtual. So those are the types of business cases that I've seen.
Yeah, because there are customers that will do actual billable hours through consultants, right? So that's where, yeah, some of that cost savings can go, right? As far as utilizing that technology instead, right? Oh, I think there's another question here. Oh, actually, Chris posted the cost calculator estimator. Thanks, Chris.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's perfect. That's it. Yeah, I was just doing it real time. There's a larger report there where if you're education, manufacturing, and construction, you're going to see along with that estimator an overall report. And then if you're not in those industries, there's kind of an overall here's across the industry report. Leverage that for if you've got questions in your organization, even if you're outside the industry, is this real? Is this providing value? And the answer is yes. And then it's a matter of finding the use case. And someone at CDW can absolutely help you do that. Say, hey, here's where we should go. So thanks for that.
So Brendan has a question here. He asks, have a lot of these HoloLens solutions been eligible for SR and ED tax credits in Canada?
Oh, Brendan, you've stumped the chump. If there's any fans of that. I don't know. You're welcome to shoot me an email, seangr or sean.graglia at microsoft.com. I haven't come across that at all. I have come across people using grants to be able to purchase the devices. We've got lots of that going on, but I haven't heard of tax credit. So my gut would say probably not, because I've never come across that in the years. Thanks, though. The security privacy risks of mixed reality. Thanks for that, Sia. It's especially when we look at the craziness of security going on. And it's funny, I just did my Microsoft has certifications. Some of them are fundamental. And last week I did the certification for security, SC900. And it's amazing how fast the security technology has advanced even over in the past few years. And I've been at Microsoft for 18 years. So I've seen the transition from security being something that should be thought about to, no, it's baked into every product. And so in HoloLens is a good example where the data on the device is encrypted. The flow between the device and Azure is encrypted. it's accessible from your security management systems to be able to make sure that it's secure, and it operates on Windows Hello. And so when I put on the HoloLens, it actually recognizes my eyes and logs me in. It's hard to get more secure than that.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the privacy risks, and this goes more, let's say, into the consumer especially, where and I'm glad Microsoft is leading this charge, because when you look at AI and the principles of AI, what's ethical in artificial intelligence? There's a similar groundswell, I'll call it, in mixed reality. And so when you enter a metaverse world, especially consumer worlds, how are you protected? And so this is something they learn with the app is called Outspace VR. It's a VR app that Microsoft has. They purchased it years ago, and you can go in with your PC. You can go in with Oculus. And so they actually implemented, but with feedback, a bubble to be private and to be secure in yourself. So you can only get through that bubble if someone allows you, if you've got that turned on. It's a great example, Sia, and I'm glad you brought it up, of how organizations and the ones that lead had better be thinking seriously about this. How do we empower the individual to make them feel secure and make them feel private in addition to the organization? Thanks for that question.
Any more questions, guys? You could take yourself off mute if you don't want to type. We've got about 5 minutes left.
Good discussion. Sorry, is someone breaking in?
I think Sia posted Altspace VR. I don't know, in the chat.
Oh, thank you, Sia. It's fun. I haven't done a concert yet. Good discussion, and thanks for the dialogue back and forth. I hope you're walking away with the sense that the metaverse isn't something that's happening years from now. Microsoft has demonstrated with customers and partners that it's real now. And the best foot forward is coming up with that use case, working with your CDW representative, of identifying where will it be real, as opposed to buying one off the shelf and leaving it on the shelf for years. There's real work that you can actually get done with this technology today. So I really appreciated the opportunity to share this with you folks, and hope this helps.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Sean, again for taking the time to go over this, and it was very informative. I think we have a lot more examples on how the metaverse can be used today, and it's not just about NFTs and staking tokens and getting reward tokens, right? We're talking about real use case in today's industry, and just directing it to the customers here that are attending. Be innovative to your teams, right? Show the value of like using these type of technologies to improve whatever industries you are in, right? Because these are things that are not going away. It's going to enhance the experience for your users and new hires and industries and your partners. Imagine, like, I've even had a customer that wants to do a display at a trade show. So instead of having that whole box of like all their signage and everything and shipping it out, which could cost literally hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per event, imagine just having that on a HoloLens 2 device, right? Create your own objects in that environment, and then just have a blank table and drop those objects, signage, everything right in front of the user's face, right? So it's a more engaging experience, and at the same time, they're still being able to engage with you, interact with the whole building, right? So these are new things that are developing, and it's great. It's great to see.
So I have one real quick question in the last two seconds here. This is Bernie. Sorry for all the questions in the chat.
No, it's great. No, it's great. Keep it coming.
No, I was just thinking, within our company, we're getting ready in the next year or so to put together some training programs on emerging technologies and HoloLens and the metaverse. We're looking to put together several classes. Can we just reach out to Microsoft in general to say we'd love to have somebody come on and do essentially this presentation or something very similar? Or should I speak directly with you about trying to have somebody come in and give? I've got 90 minutes reserved that I want to put on the industrial metaverse, and maybe have you guys come in and speak specifically to that. Might have Meta come in and speak to the consumer metaverse, and have just have different views from different companies. But I'd love to engage. Should I just reach out to my contacts at Microsoft, or you specifically, or how would we go about setting something like that up?
Do you have a current aligned CDW account executive right now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so maybe just send to that person. Loop me in. My email's
Okay.
right there on the screen.
Okay.
And yeah, I'll loop Sean in, and we have Microsoft in full support. We also have our own partners that support that stuff, as far as like even potential demos, depending on the size of the opportunity, and other things. So yeah, just send an email, and then just kind of briefly explaining what you need and what your direction is, and we can go from there. We'll set up a call, and we'll discuss on how to take on action on that. So that's no problem.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, no worries.
Thank you.
Great. So yeah, so we're at the 2 minute mark. We don't want to, take away some of your personal time here. So again, we thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Sean, for hosting this out and answering all those great questions. Yeah, I hope you guys found value in this. And yeah, we'll post this actual video on distribution to everyone. So, and on social media, it's going to be on YouTube. So share with any colleagues. If you have questions, reach out to us or your account executive. And yeah, thanks so much for your time, and enjoy the snow if you've experienced it yet. Take care, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.